What if the way you're living right now isn't wrong, but it's not really yours either? I'm 80 years old, and if there's one thing I can say with certainty, it's this. Most of my life didn't fall apart. It just slipped past me. Not in dramatic moments, not in obvious mistakes. In quiet days, in routines that felt safe, in choices that made sense at the time. I kept thinking there would be more time, more chances, more later. There wasn't. And the hardest part is, you don't notice what you're losing while it's happening. So before you get there, before you wake up and realize how much has already gone, there are 5 things I need to tell you. You think time is something you have, that it sits there, waiting for you to use it. I thought that too. Back then a year felt long. A week felt slow. A day felt like something you could always repeat. So I didn't rush. I told myself I'd start later. I'd fix things later. I'd say what needed to be said later. And nothing seemed urgent enough to change today. That's how it begins. Not with a mistake, not with a bad decision, just a quiet delay. You wake up. You go through the same routine. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow looks a lot like today. And then something strange happens. You stop remembering the days. They blur. Weeks become a feeling, not a memory. Months disappear without leaving anything behind. And one day, you try to look back, and there's nothing clear to hold on to. No specific moment. No turning point. Just a long stretch of normal. That's how time leaves you. Not by taking something away, but by giving you days that feel too ordinary to notice. I remember thinking I had plenty of time. Time to call people back. Time to try something new. Time to rest before I really started living. But time doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It just keeps moving, quietly, consistently, without asking. And the most dangerous part is, it feels harmless while it's happening. There's no alarm, no warning sign, just another day that feels like it doesn't matter. Until you realize, those were the days that made up your life. Not the big moments, not the milestones, the ordinary ones. The mornings you rushed through, the evenings you didn't notice, the conversations you half paid attention to. That was it. That was your life. And you were too busy waiting for something bigger. I used to think I needed more time. But looking back, I didn't need more time. I needed to see the time I already had. Because you don't lose time in years. You lose it in small, forgettable days. The kind you think don't count. The kind you believe you can afford to waste. You can't, because one day, those days are all that's left. And you'll try to remember them. But most of them will be gone. Not because they were taken from you, but because you never really saw them in the first place. You don't notice it at first. Nothing dramatic happens. No big argument. No final goodbye. Just a small change. You talk a little less. You meet a little less. You assume it's temporary. I used to think that's how relationships worked. People get busy. Life moves. And then things come back to how they were. Most of the time, they don't. No one leaves all at once. They fade. Slowly. Quietly. So quietly that you don't even think to stop it. There's always a reason. You're tired. They're busy. You'll call them later. Later becomes next week. Next week becomes a few months. And at some point, you realize you haven't spoken in a very long time. But even then it doesn't feel final. You still think, there's always another time. That's the illusion. I remember conversations I didn't finish. Things I meant to say. Questions I never asked. Not because I didn't care, but because I thought I had more time with them. That we would sit down again. That there would be another moment. There wasn't. And the hardest part is, you don't know which moment is the last one. There's no sign, no pause in the air that tells you this is it. So you treat it like any other day. You leave the conversation half done. You walk away without saying what you feel. And life just keeps moving. Until one day, there's nothing left to go back to. People change. They move away. They become someone else. Or sometimes they're just gone. And you're left with memories that feel unfinished. Not because something went wrong, but because you assumed it would continue. That's what I got wrong. I thought relationships were stable. That once someone was in your life, they would stay there. But people aren't fixed. They're passing through, just like you. And the real loss isn't that they left. It's that you didn't fully see them while they were there. You didn't listen closely enough. You didn't ask deeper questions. You didn't say the things that mattered. Because you thought you could always do it next time. You can't. There isn't always a next time. And that's something you only understand when it's already too late. So if there's someone in your life right now, someone you haven't called, someone you haven't really spoken to, don't assume they'll still be there when you're ready. Because one day, you'll look back and realize it wasn't that they disappeared. It's that you slowly let the connection fade, thinking you had more time than you actually did. I used to believe I was doing everything right. I followed the path, the safe one, the one people respect. Study, work, stability, responsibility. From the outside it looked correct. Nothing was falling apart. Nothing was obviously wrong. But something never felt fully mine. Not enough to stop. Not enough to question. Just enough to ignore. That's the dangerous place. When your life is fine. Because fine doesn't force you to look deeper. It doesn't push you to ask uncomfortable questions. It lets you continue. Year after year. I told myself this is what people do. You grow up. You become responsible. You choose what makes sense. Not what you want. What makes sense. And slowly, you stop asking what you want at all. That question disappears. Not because you answered it, but because you stopped listening to it. I remember moments when something inside me tried to speak. A hesitation, a doubt, a quiet feeling that this wasn't quite right. But I ignored it. Because everything looked stable. Because other people approved. Because it was easier to continue than to stop and rethink everything. And that's how you drift. Not into failure, but into a life that doesn't belong to you. You don't feel lost. You just don't feel fully present. You wake up. You go through your day. You do what needs to be done. And it works. That's the problem. It works well enough that you never interrupt it. Until much later. When things slow down. When the noise fades. When you finally have time to sit with yourself. And there's a question waiting. A question that has been there for years. Quiet. Patient. Was this ever what I wanted? And the truth is, most people don't have an answer. Not a clear one. Because they never really chose. They followed. Expectations. Opportunities. Fear of making the wrong decision. So they made the safe one. Again and again. I'm not saying the safe choice is wrong. I'm saying, if you never question it, you might spend your whole life living something that was never yours. And the hardest part is this. You can do everything right and still end up somewhere you didn't mean to be. No big mistake. No single moment to blame. Just a series of reasonable decisions that slowly took you away from yourself. I didn't realize it at the time because nothing felt urgent. There was no crisis, no collapse, just a quiet distance growing inside me. Between who I was and the life I was living. And I told myself I'd figure it out later. That I'd come back to it. That one day I'd stop and really think about what I wanted. But later has a way of disappearing. It turns into years. And then decades. And then you're sitting there looking back. Trying to remember when you last felt certain. Not confident. Not successful. Certain. Certain that this is your life. not just a life that made sense at the time. That's something I wish I understood earlier, because it's not about making perfect choices. It's about staying close to yourself while you make them, not drifting too far, not ignoring that quiet voice for too long, because it doesn't go away. It just gets harder to hear. And one day, it's almost silent. And by then, you've already lived most of your life. I used to worry about so many things. Things that felt urgent, important, impossible to ignore. Money, what people thought of me, whether I was ahead or falling behind. At the time, it didn't feel optional. It felt like survival. You wake up thinking about it. You carry it through the day. You bring it to bed with you at night, and it follows you into your sleep. That constant pressure, that quiet voice saying, "You're not doing enough." I listened to that voice for years. I let it decide how I spent my time, what I said yes to, what I walked away from. I thought if I could just get ahead, just reach a certain point, it would finally go quiet. It doesn't, because the target keeps moving. There's always someone doing better, always something you don't have yet, always a reason to feel like you're not there. And without realizing it, you start building your life around things that never actually settle. That's the trap. You think you're chasing stability, but you're chasing something that keeps shifting. And then one day, you reach a point where things slow down. You're no longer in the race the same way. And you look back, not at your achievements, not at your numbers, but at the things that used to keep you awake at night. And something strange happens. You can't even remember most of them. The deals, the comparisons, the opinions you cared so much about. They're gone, not solved, not resolved, just irrelevant. That's the part no one tells you. Most of what feels overwhelming right now won't even exist in your memory later. It felt important at the time. That's all. I spent years worrying about how I was seen, whether I was respected, whether I was doing enough, whether I was keeping up. And now, none of that has weight anymore. No one asks. No one keeps score. And even if they did, it wouldn't matter, because the things that stay with you aren't the things you tried to prove. They're the things you experienced, the moments you were actually there, the times you felt something real. Not pressure, not comparison, just presence. But those moments were rare, because I was too busy thinking ahead, too focused on what comes next, too caught up in things that felt urgent but were never truly important. That's the cost. You trade your attention for problems that don't last. And in doing that, you miss the parts of life that do. I'm not saying those worries aren't real. They are. They feel heavy for a reason, but they don't stay. And if you build your whole life around them, you'll look back one day and realize you gave too much energy to things that were never meant to last, and not enough to the things that were right in front of you. At some point, everything becomes quieter. Not suddenly, not all at once, just less noise, less rushing, less proving, less trying to keep up. And in that quiet, something becomes very clear. Most of what you thought mattered doesn't stay. Not the achievements, not the recognition, not the things you spent years chasing. They fade, not because they weren't real, but because they don't follow you the way you think they will. What stays is different, much simpler. It's the ordinary things, the ones you almost ignored. A conversation that didn't feel important at the time. A moment where you weren't thinking about anything else. A day that didn't stand out, but felt calm. Those are the things that remain, not in detail, but in feeling. And that feeling is everything. I remember specific achievements, but they feel distant, flat, like something I read about rather than something I lived. But the small moments, they're still here. Not perfectly, but enough to feel them again. A quiet afternoon, a familiar voice, a moment where nothing needed to change, That's what stays. And the strange part is, those moments were always available. They weren't rare. They were everywhere. I just didn't treat them like they mattered. I thought life was somewhere else, somewhere bigger, somewhere ahead, somewhere I hadn't reached yet. So I kept moving. I kept looking forward, and I missed what was already there. That's the mistake. Not that you lived wrong, but that you kept overlooking what was already enough. Because in the end, your life isn't made of milestones. It's made of days, ordinary days, the kind you don't take pictures of, the kind you don't talk about, the kind you think you'll forget. But those are the ones that build everything. And if you're not there for them, if your mind is always somewhere else, you don't really live them. You pass through them. And later, when you try to look back, there's not much to hold on to. That's what I understand now. Not in theory, not as an idea, but as something I can feel. The value was never in what I achieved. It was in how I spent my time while I was achieving it. Whether I was present, whether I noticed, whether I allowed those moments to be enough. Because they were. They always were. I just didn't see it. And by the time I did, most of it had already passed. I'm not here to tell you what to do. That's not how life works. No one listens to advice until they're ready to hear it. And most of the time, you only understand these things after you've already lived through them. I'm not different. I had people who tried to tell me, in small ways, in quiet conversations, but I didn't hear it. Not really, because I thought I had time. Time to figure things out. Time to come back to what matters. Time to correct the things I was ignoring. That belief stays with you for a long time, long enough to shape your decisions, long enough to make you delay what actually matters. And then one day, you realize something simple. You weren't running out of time. You were just not paying attention to the time you had. That's the difference. And it's a quiet one. Easy to miss, because nothing feels urgent while it's happening. There's no clear moment where everything changes. Just a slow shift, a growing awareness, a feeling that things have moved further than you expected. And now, you're looking back more than you're looking forward. That's where I am. Not full of regret, but aware. Aware of what I didn't see. Aware of what I assumed would last. Aware of how much of life I moved through without really noticing it. And if there's anything worth saying now, it's not a lesson. It's just this. Don't wait for things to become important before you treat them that way. Because by the time they feel important, they're usually already gone. The days, the people, the small, quiet moments. They don't announce themselves. They don't tell you, this will matter later. They just happen, and then they pass. So if you're listening to this now, not later, not someday, but now, just look a little closer at what's already in front of you. Not everything, just something, a moment, a person, a part of your day you usually ignore. Stay with it a little longer. Notice it, because this is what your life is made of. Not the big turning points, not the things you're chasing. This, right here. And if you can see it now, really see it, then maybe you won't have to sit where I am one day and realize you had it all along. You just weren't paying attention.